people who, when they needed to zigzag, it wasn't because of their side hustle. They were actually able to do it based off of like a hobby and a relationship and a network and a skill they had been honing just as a hobby for decades. And then all of a sudden they're like, actually, I can turn that into my job. And boom, now they're able to move. But also from diversification of their identity, that you're not tying yourself to that one thing that you are. And that sort of power gives you so much more autonomy.
你知道吗？现在的时代，你如果做一个稳定的全职工作，竟然可以变成你这辈子最高的风险。这个听起来好像很颠覆我们从小被教育的人生公式哦。所以今天呢，我要跟大家分享的这本书很特别，它叫做《发现我的多重职涯的组合》。这本书的作者呢是哈佛商学院的资深讲师 Christina Wallace。那他的这个职涯历程非常的特别哦。待会节目里面我们邀请到了 Christina 来上我们的节目，所以呢我们会做一个很深度的对谈。那 Christina 也已经在线上了，我们接下来的节目会用全英文的方式来做对谈。那如果你想要听中文字幕的版本的话，那你可以到 YouTube 的版本来去收听。OK， 那我们接下来就进入今天的访谈咯。Okay, Christina, I just introduced you to our audience, and please say hello to everyone.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
Okay, so I just very curious because I have read your book, and I think it's very interesting because one statement that is very like thought-provoking, because you say that a full-time job, a single full-time job could be the biggest risk in our generation. And why do you say that, and what did you observe that this could be an issue and you wanted to point out?
Yeah, it's funny because I wrote this book before AI came on the scene, and it's even more true now. So the original premise behind that was that the stability that our parents and our grandparents had in this relationship with employment, this belief that our loyalty to an employer would be reciprocated, was no longer true. That was an outdated belief. And so putting all of our trust into a single job, a single path, and not thinking about and cultivating all these other parts of ourselves was a really dangerous idea. And not just from an income standpoint, although it is dangerous from an income standpoint. If you're not thinking about what are your other skills, your other networks, the other ways that you might be able to zig and zag if you needed to. But it's also really dangerous from an identity standpoint, right? You don't want to tie up your identity with your job, because if you lose that, you lose yourself, and it's really destabilizing, especially really ambitious people. The higher up you go, the more, at least in the US, the more you really see that calcifying of identity and employment. And so it was this call to action to really say, hey, like, I love that you love your work. I'm ambitious too, but really think about all of the other ways that you can bring in fullness of your life, these other things that are important to you, give you joy, give you diversification, give you flexibility, because this is not the same world that our parents built their lives in. And as much as they love us, their advice is out of date. So this was an entirely true thesis pre-AI. And now AI is here, and it's an even truer thesis now. The need to be kind of the entrepreneur of your own life, to take the agency and sort of drive your own life, is so much more necessary even now. And so I think that's the piece to hold on to, not just from a place of fear, like everything is changing and so you can't trust anyone, although that is slightly true, but also from a place of excitement and of fulfillment that we get the opportunity to be so much more than just our jobs. And we get the opportunity to not just pick a path and be on it for 40 years, right? And so I think there's really a wonderful side of this too, that can be a really quite fulfilling piece if you can find that joy alongside the stability that it might offer more than just the fear of it all.
Yeah, and I wanted to give our audience a more context because our audience is like book lovers. So I share a lot of books, and I've mentioned that this kind of like a slash, like we have an author, podcaster, teacher, like a slash, the identity. And I'm just curious from your point of view, because you are teaching at Harvard Business School, and you have seen a lot of case study, you have seen a lot of analytic data, numbers. And is there any indication that suggests that this kind of portfolio life, the diversification, is getting better and better for workers in nowadays? I'm just curious, is this like evidence-based or just a quote or just a dream?
Yeah, we certainly are seeing the evidence around this. This has been in place and transitioning toward that basically since the Great Recession. The workforce never really came back with the same linear stability that it did before. And we had a lot more of this self-driven entrepreneurship and self-created, multifaceted, multi-hyphenate career paths ever since. But I think certainly now that we are seeing what can be given to algorithms will be, and what we had seen as sort of the last vestiges of the safe path of engineering and math and medicine and maybe law is no longer that. I think we're actually feeling in education, certainly, this breath of fresh air, that this notion of the liberal arts, of classics, of the fine arts, of psychology and humanities, and sort of this multidisciplinary approach to education will have a resurgence, because it is no longer about the expertise of execution of these really minute kind of pockets of expertise, but so much more about understanding how to connect the dots of things. Yeah. And that's really where these multi-hyphenates live. That's where you and I kind of thrive. I really do believe that that is the future of where we're going to see a lot of value from humans when AI can take the things that can be given to algorithms.
I see two terms in your book that you said that one kind of expertise is like M-shaped, like the character M-shaped generalist, and another character is T-shaped experts. Yeah. So what's the difference between these two?
The T-shaped expert is along this idea that we still need expertise, right?
Yeah.
AI is only as good as the people using it. You can't outsource your work to AI because garbage in is garbage out, right? So we still need expertise that can craft great prompts, that can architect an agent system, right? Who can set the boundaries, give it the right data, craft the parameters of what sort of output it expects, to be able to QA that output and decide where and how that information gets plugged into wherever it goes next. So that expertise will still be important, and they will have to be able to understand how that expertise, where they can leverage those tools. And then sort of the top bar of that T that sort of connects outward is where these experts can no longer just be experts. They now will need to be able to connect their expertise with where else it needs to go within the organization. Understand the kind of the so what of their work, of based on what I have now been able to do, what's the implication for finance, or how might this need to go connect with engineering? So they become a little bit more of managers of the AI, right? Using that to craft their expertise. And then they have to be able to find those connections laterally. Yeah. The M-shaped generalist, this is sort of where I would fit in an organization if I were to leave academia. This is the person who, this is sort of like the agent manager who is kind of architecting the bigger systems. And this is someone who is incredibly curious, who is really excited to sort of bend and shift from these different kind of functions, these different roles. This is like the engineer who also designs and the product manager who also codes, and they're not rigid in the jobs that they were hired into. They're flexible and curious and capable of taking on a lot more. And when you get a whole bunch of them on one team, you get this really wonderful, flexible, agile team that can move fast and produce some really incredible work that I think it allows the organization to be really flexible as well. So I think these are sort of like, I think the M-shaped generalist is kind of the future of middle management, and the T-shaped expert is kind of the future of the individual contributor. And so I think these are the opportunities, rather than being terrified of AI is going to take my job, these are the opportunities to figure out like, where and how can I use these tools for the things that they're good at? And then what is that fingerprint? What is uniquely mine that only I can do, and that I am still able to really find my value in this role? Yeah. And then what are all the other things that I want to do, that I care about, that bring me joy outside of work, so that I'm not putting my self-worth entirely in this work in the event that it does go sideways. And I do have to make a shift, right? Like, it's a yes and situation.
Wow. And I'm just kind of resonate with the M-shaped generalist, because that's what I'm heading for. I try to develop some other skills and some other domain knowledge that I can control AI to do like multi-domain kind of stuff. And I wanted to dig deeper into your experience, Christina. I learned something from your book because you have co-founded a company before. I think it's during your age 28, right? And that company finally failed. But that's very interesting, because Harvard Business School have turned your failure into a case study. So can you share with us a little bit about how can a failure become a successful case study?
So this was my first startup, the first big venture that I built out of business school after my MBA. And it was in sort of the fashion, e-commerce, direct-to-consumer boom of 2011, 2012. And for a number of reasons, which we don't need to get into, my co-founder and I, we didn't have enough capital. We were learning too slowly. We built something that our customers love, but the operational model and the money, it wasn't gelling, and we had to shut down. And it was really devastating to have to do this for something I loved, for something that I really tied my identity to deeply at the time. And it was the first time I failed at anything. At 28, I think the worst thing I'd ever gotten was a bad grade once in college. And it was like a B-, right? Like, it wasn't even that bad of a grade. And so it was this huge crisis of confidence, and then had to get back on my feet. I'm actually really grateful for not having much of a safety net. And that was part of what I wanted to talk to students about. So when I had been a student at Harvard, I had complained that we never studied any failures in the entrepreneurship class, because the majority of startups fail, and yet we were only studying the successes. And my professor, who then became an investor in my company, well, it's because no one lets us write about their failures. Like, no one wants to be the face of failure. That's why we don't get to study them. So after we failed and I lost his money, me and my co-founder, he gave us a little bit of time to get back on our feet, lick our wounds. And then he came up and very gently was like, remember your complaint? Remember how no one lets me write about their failure?
Yeah.
This is your chance. Do you want to be the face of failure? And I felt so bad for having lost his money. I felt I had to say yes. But I also wanted to say yes. We didn't break any laws. We didn't hurt people. We didn't make any choices that we couldn't go and tell anyone to their face about, right? Well, like there was nothing I was embarrassed by. We made mistakes along the way. We made choices that now with better judgment, I can say, that was probably the wrong call. Maybe you shouldn't have hired that person. You didn't need to stock up on inventory that high, like you had a working capital problem. But there was nothing that I was shamed about in this failure. And the getting back on my feet was such an important part of that process that I wanted to be able to model that for the students, to show that it wasn't the end of the world. Failure is not fatal.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, go ahead, write the case study. So they wrote it and we read it, and I was like, oh, you hear about it in the abstract and then you read it in black and white and you're like, this is really unflattering, but we're going to do this. And then we taught it. They taught it every year for all 900 MBA students. Wow. And I would go back every year. And it was funny because the case study ends, all case studies are written about like a big decision, and they always end before the decision is made. And that's what leaves the tension in the room for the students to debate. And so the case study ends at the point where we're about to go into the board meeting, where we either are going to get the money to save the company or we have to decide to shut it down. So they don't know that we failed unless they've Googled us, and they're not supposed to do that. They don't know that we failed. And so every year, I'm coming back, I'm sitting in the classroom, and I hear them say, oh, well, if she's here, they must have pulled it off. Like she wouldn't be here if they had failed. And then we get to the big reveal, and I get to go up there and tell them what happened, and they're all just stunned. And then I take their questions about how did I get back on my feet financially and from a personal standpoint, and did anyone hold this against me socially or when I was trying to get, my next job? And when they realize that not only was it not the end of the world, but especially because I stayed in the startup world, and this is so common in the startup world, that because I didn't break any laws and I didn't hurt anybody, that this wasn't seen as a big black mark on my resume. This was really considered an incredible learning opportunity. It was considered like an incredible leap forward in my ability to make and manage things, and pushed my career ahead so much further than if I had taken a job somewhere, right? Yeah. And so like that judgment muscle that you develop as an entrepreneur, because you are making decisions and you're seeing the results of those decisions in real time, that loop goes so fast and you can run it so many times that you develop judgment so much faster than if you go take a job somewhere and you're in the middle. And even if you do make a decision, you're so far from the results of that decision that you aren't able to really see, was that a good decision? Was it the right call? It's harder to develop that. And so I was really proud to be the face of failure for like 8 years. And it's actually one of the reasons I ended up joining the faculty, because I came back every year and because I stayed so close to the school. When I got to a point where the company that I was working with was getting acquired, and I didn't really want to go to the acquirer, and I was looking for what my next kind of step would be, that same professor who had written the case study and invested in me and had been my professor said, would now be the right time for you to come and join the faculty? Like, everyone knows you, everyone loves you. I've been trying to recruit you for years. I was like, oh, I thought that was a joke. I didn't think you were serious. It came full circle, like being open and honest about something that really did not have any reason for me to carry shame gave me an opportunity to come back and continue a new season of my life in academia.
Wow. And talking about decisions, I'm just curious, if you were sit in this AI era and you want to start over, to start up, do the same thing in this AI tool, AI software, would you do anything differently? Would you do different decisions than before?
I mean, I certainly wouldn't be building an AI e-commerce direct-to-consumer startup in the AI era. I think that was a business model that was of its time. And even then, 2011, if you were graduating from Stanford or Harvard MBA and you built any company that even had a website, you were considered a tech company and you raised VC money. We were not a tech company. We should not have taken VC money. And so I think over the next decade, venture capital learned that direct-to-consumer e-commerce, like this is not going to have venture-style outcomes. And so that business model has had its day and it has waned. You know, one of the things that I certainly would do differently, and I have done this differently in the startups, in the companies that I've built since Quincy, is I would not be taking investor money at the beginning. Oh. I wouldn't have to now, right? And now, with all of these AI tools, you can build so much further and faster without needing capital. You don't have to hire for much longer. Even as a non-technical founder, I can build prototypes. I can even build working products. I can do the marketing. I can be my own product manager. I can be my own sales support. Like there's so many more of the functions that I could do myself without having to go take VC money, that even if I took a little bit of angel money or friends and family, I could go a long ways before I had to bring someone in on my cap table whose judgment I'm now signing up for. That is certainly one thing that I would be doing differently. And then I think the other thing, and I talk about this a lot with my students, is really emphasizing if you're going to have a co-founder. And I think it is becoming more and more optional to have a co-founder.
Why? Why is that?
Given all of these tools. I mean, it used to be about what are the skills you bring? What are the skills you're lacking? You have got the commercial co-founder, the technical co-founder. Maybe you have the design or the go-to-market or something. But like you each had to own a piece of this. And then you went off and you had to find your people and your networks and all of this. And if you're able to kind of be the vision, be the strategy, and really build a lot of these pieces yourself further, I'm not saying you can do it forever, but you can go further. You might get to the point where rather than having the technical co-founder, you hire the founding engineer. Rather than having the commercial, CMO co-founder, you just hire the head of distribution, the head of go-to-market. And so if you want a co-founder now, you really have to have a lot of intent behind why and what are your roles and what are you bringing to this. Certainly, students who find each other at Harvard Business School have always had the challenge of who's going to be the CEO. That is now doubly a problem now. And so we're really challenging them. That was a problem I had with my co-founder. And so really challenging that, like, who's going to own what? Why are you both here? What is your kind of contribution to this team? It doesn't mean you can't have two, but you really have to have clarity on that team before you get moving.
Wow, I think it's a very good reminder for us and for anyone who wants to do some like a business, some product. And I want to get back to the book, like the book Portfolio Life. And I've noticed that the portfolio, this term is used in investment, like you want to invest stocks. And what do you mean by portfolio life? How can we treat our life like a portfolio?
So that's where I drew the framework from, was this financial model. I came to this framework because when I was at business school, I had the great joy of taking a class with Clay Christensen. And at the end of that course,
I like him.
He was marvelous. At the end of that course, he was really quite insistent that we think about our lives and not just our careers. And the question he left us with was, how will you measure your life? And he said, what you measure is what you manage. And if you're only measuring your promotions and the money in your bank account and how many people you manage, right, like, then that will be all you focus on. And so I was looking for a model for how am I going to think holistically about my life and not just my professional pursuits. And as I was looking for various frameworks and models, I remembered from my first semester of finance this idea of a portfolio. And I thought it was genius because it was this notion, I didn't know anything about finance when I went to business school. I didn't know the difference between a stock and a bond. I actually said that in my application. I was like, I don't know anything, but I will figure it out before I get here. But I thought it was genius. Portfolios, they're genius because you come up with your strategy for what is your risk tolerance for a given chapter, season of your life. Yeah. And then you design your allocations across different assets that are differently correlated based on that risk tolerance, right? Like you have an understanding of like, I need to have some higher risk things or I'm never going to be able to hit the yield I'm looking for. I need to have some stable things. That's where the bonds come in. Otherwise, like I could lose it all. Like diversification is the name of the game. And depending on the season I'm in will dictate how much risk I can take. What are my goals? All of these things. I was like, this is amazing. So as I thought about this in the context of my life, I was like, okay, I can think about like, maybe I've got the full-time job that is more stable yes. for now. And that gives me the predictable salary, the health insurance. Maybe that's like the bonds of my portfolio. And then I'm able to take some risk with, maybe I have a little startup on the side. Maybe I have no evidence that the startup is going anywhere yet. So it's a really high risk investment, but it's just a small slice of my portfolio. And it can go to zero because I've got this nice big bond, my full-time job. Yeah. And then I've got my family that I'm carving out time for. I'm taking care of my health. I've got a hobby. I've got some friends. I've got a creative pursuit. I have community time or a religious practice or whatever else. And crucially, all of these things have to add up to 100%.
Yes.
It can't be more than 100%, which is my bad habit. They could be less than 100%, which means you actually have some extra capacity, which is amazing. Like you're leaving some slack in the system for life to happen, but you can't over allocate. It allows you to sort of, make this allocation for this season. And then as things happen, just like with your actual financial portfolio, right? Like the returns come in, the market does its thing, and suddenly your portfolio allocations might be very different than what you had designed. You can either decide, do I want to go back and sort of rebalance them back to what they were? Or is it time for me to choose a different allocation based off of this risk? So in this example, you might suddenly see that side startup really start to take off. You might see that like, wow, I've really kind of de-risked this idea. There's something there. So maybe I'm at a point now where it's not nearly as risky to go and turn that into a real entrepreneurship thing. And maybe I step away from the full-time job. Maybe I ask if I can stick around as a consultant for them. So I still have some income. But now that's a smaller slice. And now I increase my entrepreneurship slice, right? Like you can start to sort of think about how these pieces fit together. And so like the idea here is that you get to design something, like you have agency, you're in control. You're designing it for the season you're in. You have the flexibility to change when that season changes. You get the diversification, and not just the diversification financially, but you also do get that. You can have multiple income streams if you want. You can have the multiple networks and skills that you're building out. I have some great case studies in there, as you remember, of people who, when they needed to zigzag, it wasn't because of their side hustle. They were actually able to do it based off of like a hobby and a relationship and a network and a skill they had been honing just as a hobby for decades. And then all of a sudden they're like, actually, I could turn that into my job. And boom, now they're able to move. But also from diversification of their identity, that you're not tying yourself to that one thing that you are. And that sort of power gives you so much more autonomy. I think I saw actually someone posted today on LinkedIn about this model, a wonderful, beautiful post. And she said what the portfolio model gave her was sovereignty over her life.
Wow.
I was like, that's a good word. And I think it's just, that's the thing that so many of our generation and the folks that are coming up after us are probably feeling that they don't have control of. And so maybe that's a little bit of the power of this model that people can kind of hold on to.
So if someone wants to pursue like the best portfolio or the highest yield, what's your suggestion for them?
So the first time I gave this talk, when the book was first published, and I gave it to my students, I gave it to all of the graduating students at HBS.
Yeah.
The very first question was from this well-meaning woman who worked in finance. And she said, I get it, portfolios, I get it.
Yeah.
But what's the index that I should be comparing my portfolio to know that I have alpha against the market?
Yeah.
I don't think you understood anything that I just taught you at all. Come to my office, we will talk more. So the goal here, and I give all sorts of templates and tools and various activities, and I emphasize, like, take what works for you, leave behind what doesn't, you know. But one of those that I love is this like personal balance scorecard. And I have all these different ways to measure, right? How will you measure your life? I set my goals, I make sure that I can measure if I met them. But then I have this question at the bottom. It's just simply, are you happy?
Yeah.
And for me, I define happy as, did you have more good days than bad? And it's a vibe. It's not like I'm tracking it. There's no like, I'm not quantified selfing it on an app somewhere. It's just a vibe. Did I have more good days than bad? You know it. You know when you're in it. And if I am happy, then great. Like, let's keep going. And if I'm not happy, it kind of doesn't matter if I hit all my goals or not.
Yes.
If I'm not happy, then like I failed. So let's go rebalance.
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole point of this, is for me to be living the life that I actually find joy in, not the one that other people are impressed by or the one that other people have dictated that I should live. And so the are you happy is probably, I guess, how I measure my life, if we really want to get simplistic about it. And that's usually the friction point. That's the sign for me. If the answer is no, we've had far too many bad days in a row, that what used to be working is no longer working, right? And so like something has changed. Some of my needs aren't being met, or some of the situation has changed, or whatever. Like, the portfolio needs to be rebalanced, right? Like, no judgment. We got to mix it up.
My takeaway is that the happiness cannot be compared. There is no index you can compare it to.
Yeah, like, I don't care about alpha. I don't need to be happier than you. I just need to be happy. I was like, that is the most HBS question in the history of HBS questions that I've ever heard.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay. And I'm going to ask about, I know that you co-work with a SAT Knowledge, because I like this company, SAT Knowledge.
Yes.
You are creating an online course for Taiwan audience. So I'm very curious why you choose Taiwan and why you choose at this time to create this course, and what is this course about? What are you going to teach us?
So I didn't choose Taiwan. Taiwan chose me.
Wow.
I had the great pleasure of meeting one of the founders of SAT Knowledge through Harvard. I got to be his professor and develop this wonderful relationship, and he invited me to come and create this course with him. So I had a delightful chance to come and get to know Taiwan better. I have never been here before, and this has just been a real pleasure to be part of this really incredible country that is playing such a huge role in the AI boom, right? With chips and all of the things, that the history of how you've been part of the technology industry. So this has been just like a a happy coincidence. But the course really is this perfect kind of meeting of moments where, I wrote this book pre-AI, but it's becoming even more relevant post-AI. And so when I was talking with Stefan and we were looking at how AI has changed entrepreneurship, which is what I teach at HBS, how AI is changing middle management, how it's changing strategy, competitive moats, how owners are thinking about, remaining competitive. All of this kind of swirl that's happening at the work, in the business, and the strategy level, it's all in the context of your life too, right? Like that you can't separate work from life. It's all part of this. And so we found this kind of beautiful way to build a course that kind of creates these relationships, these frameworks of being able to understand what these tools are, how to use them really effectively, what is the unique role of humans in this future workflow, the Centaur workflow, this sort of human plus AI, and how you can move faster and sort of still hold on to your judgment, your relationships, your proprietary data, the communication. So the things that keep you human, we still will need. And then kind of wrap that all up into, why does this matter? It matters because it has to fit within who you are, what you want, and how you are designing your life. And so we get to sort of bookend this AI course with the portfolio life, which is like just the perfect marrying of the work that I had been doing and the work that I'm now doing. It was just a wonderful treat.
I have researched like your outline and your course content, and I find something I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned that how people use AI, there are two different kind of people. One kind of people is called user, and one kind of people is called entrepreneur. So what is the difference between them? Why is every like general person, we just use AI as a user, and how do we use as a entrepreneur?
I think the difference I have seen, at least up to this point, and who knows, everything changes so quickly. Who knows how long this will still be true. I've seen one category of folks who are approaching particularly generative AI. So AI is a category of a lot of different types of technology, which is a little bit unwieldy, to be honest. But generative AI, I see folks using this in a couple of ways, but primarily one as sort of a really advanced Google of like, let me just look things up and have it tell me answers. And two, as a, let me outsource my brain. Let me have it do the work for me. And that's, neither of them are particularly great ideas. I think it can do some of the research stuff, but you have to give it good instructions, give it good context, and you have to check its work. So I think of generative AI in particular as like an intern. You got to be really clear in the instructions you give it, and then you have to check their work. So if you're relying on what it's telling you and you're not checking their work, I wouldn't do it. And it's certainly, if you're outsourcing your work to that, if you're asking it to write the report or do your homework or, I don't know, analyze this legal contract before I sign it, like that's not a great idea. The way that I see entrepreneurs using it that I think is really interesting and I sort of really emphasize as an opportunity is as they're building out kind of workflows and processes, because to do that, and this is where we see much more of like agentic AI, to do that really well, you have to really precisely define the problem, the workflow, right? Like the way that you would manage a person, you have to manage these systems. And if you can define that really, really well for things that are repeatable, dependable, can be turned into something algorithmic, this is a really powerful tool. It works 24 hours a day. It doesn't take sick days. Right? Like you can really gain leverage. You almost get this, free back office team for yourself the way any sort of solo creator now becomes a team, right? Like, it's incredible if you can set this up as though you are managing a small company rather than I'm going to have it do my homework.
I've noticed one distinction between, because I think some people want AI to do the full automation. They jump to the full automation step.
Yeah.
But in your course, you mentioned that the centaur workflow, meaning that half man and half horse, right? And what do you mean by centaur workflow? What is the difference between full automation and like half automation? Can I say half automation?
Yeah, for sure. So there are some things that AI does extremely well. And there are some things that it is really bad at, but it rarely will tell you that it's really bad at something. Most often, it will come back with confident wrong answers. And right, like we see it do this all the time. We call them hallucinations, but they don't know it's wrong answers. They're just predicting the next most likely word. And so like when it's extremely obvious, it's easy to catch. What's problematic is when it's not extremely obvious, when it's just off by a little, or when you don't have the expertise to know that it's off. So this idea of the centaur workflow is that you use AI in the parts of the workflow that it does really well. And the course sort of gets into the weeds of what parts that is. And you really tightly scope what you're asking it to do. And then there's a couple of kind of requirements of this workflow where, like, where is the human in the loop? Where are you checking the work? Because if you, for instance, if you have like an agent workflow that's 9 steps long, and you scope this whole thing and you kick it off, and then you get to the very end and you get the output and the output's wrong, like, what do you fix? You don't know where it went wrong.
Yeah, it's like a black box. Yeah,
it's like a black box. So the idea is, like, where along this path do you need to check in? Where is, like, are there steps where it's more likely that you need to verify, do some QA, have a little iteration on this? And where are you actually pretty confident that it can move forward with the process? So where do you want to have this human in the loop? Where do you go? How are you thinking about your audit trail? You want to be able to recreate what has happened, especially if you're trying to do anything in a regulated space. You have to be able to recreate it. What sort of data are you giving it access to, right? Like, you don't want the same set of kind of flows to have access to proprietary financial information and proprietary banking information and proprietary health information and customer data. Like, you got to be smart about how you are kind of setting up and giving access to these different systems and how you are protecting your company. Otherwise, button one misstep and the whole thing gets deleted, or the whole thing blows up, or you accidentally wire someone $1 million and you're done, right? And so there's a lot of let it do what it does well and make sure that you are still doing what you do well, which is the judgment and the architecture and the expertise to know when we can move forward and when we need to iterate.
So I think this course, it sounds like it's for people who wants to bring AI into their team, maybe like a manager, like a leader, and someone who have a deep domain knowledge and he wonder how to turn it into a product, a business. So what kind of person do you think this course is designed for them?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this certainly is for sort of leaders or business owners that are interested in, excited by, and maybe don't know much about how to bring AI into their existing business. And especially if they are thinking about, like, how does this change my business model? We go into quite a bit about the strategy and the competitive moats and what used to be really defensible that isn't now. And so how to really think about that positioning. I think it's also relevant for individual employees who might be thinking, like, is my job on the chopping block? And what does that mean for me? Because I hope what they take away from this is actually, if I figure out how to use these tools to take the low value, the low cognitive value work off of my day-to-day plate and actually get to move up to do more of the judgment work, more of the relational work that I can do, that I want to do, I just never have time to do, then you actually are showing that you have so much more value in your role, right? Like, I think you have the opportunity to really demonstrate how important you are, rather than, I think we're seeing a little bit of this knee-jerk reaction by some business owners to be like, I can save so much money, let's just fire all these people and I'll get efficiency. And then they try that and everything goes sideways and they're like, oh, oops, turns out I do still need people. So if you're an individual worker, like, this is your chance to get ahead of that and figure out how you can really succeed in this new era. And then I think for entrepreneurs, this course is really valuable. If you're an existing entrepreneur, I mean, kind of have to take this. Like, this is the new way that we're building companies. And if you're an aspiring entrepreneur or someone who has always sort of thought that maybe you have an idea, but you don't know how to get started, or you don't have the resources to get started, like, this is the playbook for why this is now your moment, you know? Because I think the big insight of this whole era is, like, execution costs are now basically zero, which means proprietary insights are what drives advantages. Knowing something deeply, having distribution, having access to something like a data set or something that you're like, the general population doesn't see, doesn't have access to, can't get to, like, that is where your fingerprint can really create a lot of outsized value.
Especially, I like one word you mentioned, that AI can remove the low cognitive work from us and leave us with the high cognitive work. So I was wondering that, what's your definition for, like, high cognitive work? Because I think it's more valuable than the low cognitive work. So what kind of work or what kind of action you would define it as a high cognitive work?
Yeah. I think there's a couple of categories that come to mind. One is around diagnostics and synthesizing, right? Which is sort of like two sides of the same coin. You've got a whole bunch of data and you're trying to find the story of either, like, what exactly is happening here? Because you got to diagnose the problem correctly. Every doctor knows this. You got to diagnose it correctly in order to be able to solve it. You diagnose it incorrectly, we give it the wrong solution, and now we're off in the wrong corner. So putting together the story, given the data you have, the diagnosis, and then synthesizing, given the data you have, of, like, what is the so what? I think that is very high cognitive value, and I don't think AI is very good at it. I think it comes to the most obvious conclusion, and it stops. So I think that is a deeply human job on both sides. Certainly, as you think about ideation and innovation and sort of new product development, the ability to connect the dots diagonally, to sort of take an idea from here and see if it works over there, the willingness to be weird and out of the box thinking and kind of go off the rails, like, AI is terrible at that. So it really does take a human to be like, let's see what a chicken would do if they were in this circumstance. You know, like, you gotta have a truly deeply human creative brain to get out of the average. Like, AI brings you to the average of everything. Storytelling, communication, evoking any sort of emotion in another human is deeply a human job. And to that end, like, relational anything, like, if you have a transactional relationship with your customers, you're kind of screwed. But if you have a relational relationship where they're coming to you for your discernment, your ability to navigate really complicated situations. They're coming to you because they trust you. You know, they could get the same answer from 15 other places, but if you give them that answer, they sleep soundly at night because you have been reliable time and time again, right? Like those are the things. AI can't be held accountable.
Yeah.
But you can be, right? So these are the elements where if you can find that way to say, I can put the dots together, find the story, diagnose the problem, get to the so what, I can build the relationships with our clients that really help them trust us. I can be held accountable. I can find ways to communicate in a manner that really evokes an emotion that makes them realize we care, that this matters, that this isn't just transactional. Like that's where you become irreplaceable.
Wow, I find so many wisdom in our conversation because we have some differences between like different category of user, like an entrepreneur, and maybe we can find some more valuable stuff in our human, and it's more valuable than AI. So especially you mentioned that the Centaur workflow, like half automation, is the way to go. I think it's very impressive. Thank you, Christina, for this conversation. And I would recommend your book, Portfolio Life, and your online course to our audience. And anyone who wants to buy the book and buy the course, please reference to the description. And we have offered some coupon, so for discount. So thank you again, Christina, for having you on our show.
Thank you so much. It's been so lovely to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so let's say goodbye to our audience. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.